Hi guys, Ralph Kohl here, Senior Director of Federal Government Affairs here in your AANA DC office. In preparation for our Mid-Year Assembly 2017, I want to provide you with some quick video updates on the issues we will be bringing to Capitol Hill during our lobby visits. So I'll give you a quick rundown of what we'll be talking about. First off, as many of you know, as I'm sure every one of you know, President Donald Trump is in office. Republican control of both the House and Senate has led to the repeal of the Affordable Care Act becoming a very real thing. Most notably, Congress has taken up their efforts to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and the first steps have been the introduction of the American Health Care Act. This is the first part of a three-pronged approach that the Republican-led Congress is taking in their repeal and replace efforts. So first is repeal and replace of Obamacare through the American Health Care Act. Second is providing essential regulatory relief. This will be done in large part by Secretary Tom Price, a physician who's taken over as Secretary of the Labor, Health and Human Services. Third will be additional relief through additional legislation to fix some of the additional problems that the Republican-led Congress see remaining from the Affordable Care Act that they would be unable to address through the American Health Care Act due to some reconciliation rules in the United States Senate. So, some key components of the American Health Care Act. One, it eliminates several of the mandates required under the Affordable Care Act. Two, it provides tax credits to help individuals and families purchase health insurance. Gives families and individuals more control over their healthcare dollars and decisions by the expansion of health savings accounts. And it also is a reduction in the Medicaid expansion that extended coverage to individuals in the states who fell below a certain income level, and it accounts for a large portion of the additional folks who have gained coverage under the Affordable Care Act. Uncertainty reigns. At this point, there is a great deal of pushback within the Republican Party surrounding the American Health Care Act. They're essentially getting some concerns from all sides of the Republican Party. Obviously, the Democrats are in lockstep against the efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, but from inside the Republican Party, there's a good deal of pushback from moderate Republicans in the United States Senate. Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia, Cory Gardner from Colorado, Susan Collins from Maine, Dean Heller from Nevada, and Rob Portman from Ohio all have some real concerns about the loss of coverage for individuals currently getting care underneath coverage provided by the Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act. Second, Senate conservatives. This is a group of three: Rand Paul from Kentucky, Ted Cruz from Texas, and Mike Lee from Utah. These are individuals who feel like the American Health Care Act doesn't go far enough. They've termed it Obamacare Light, and they are essentially pushing for a complete repeal of the Affordable Care Act, and then they will take on the replacement plan. So they want really nothing to do with the existing plan by Republicans to replace the Affordable Care Act with the American Health Care Act, and seem to be pretty staunch at this point in their opposition. It's important to note that in the House and Senate, as I mentioned earlier, the reconciliation process requires a simple majority to pass this legislation. And as you can see, the Republicans currently have a 52-seat majority. So if they lose the Senate conservatives, they won't hit that 52-vote threshold. And if they lose some portion of the moderate Republicans, they'll also run into that problem where they won't have the 52 votes needed to advance the legislation. On the House side, Speaker Ryan is facing some strong opposition from the House Freedom Caucus. It's a block of about 60 members, which will be critical to passage. Without the majority of that group on board, and right now they seem to be pretty lockstep in their opposition, but without the entire block, Republicans would need to count on Democrats in the House to pass the legislation. And at this point, that is extremely unlikely. So, long and the short of it is the American Health Care Act is out there, repeal and replace is underway, but the chances of it's moving forward at this point and in this, this setup is uncertain, to say the least. CRNAs and repeal and replace. So at this point, we're focusing on basically our efforts on two main categories during our lobby visits and our advocacy throughout the process of efforts to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. One is highlighting the critical role that CRNAs can play in any meaningful healthcare delivery system reform. CRNAs bring kind of the three-pronged approach to meaningful reform to fruition. One, they increase access. Two, reduce costs. And three, maintain the highest quality care. So we're trying to just educate members of Congress to realize that any meaningful reform needs to fully recognize and utilize CRNAs in their efforts to come up with meaningful healthcare delivery system reform. The other aspect that we're looking at is provider non-discrimination. In 2010, Congress enacted into law provider non-discrimination, which basically said health insurers were not able to discriminate against providers solely based on their licensure. At this point, the provider non-discrimination language is safe. It is not currently included in the American Health Care Act, but we want to continue to advocate to ensure that this important provision remains intact as Congress looks to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act and potentially in the future looks at any other meaningful healthcare delivery system reform. So that's long and the short of our current efforts on repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or my staff here in the DC office. Thank you so much. Have a great day.